Good afternoon to all. Thank you for joining us for the final day of FTP. I'm Dr. Binamol, Coordinator of Research and Publication Committee. It's my great pleasure and honor to welcome you all for the 3 days faculty development program on best practices in research, organized by the Research and Publication Committee and IQAC in collaboration with Kerala State Higher Education Council, Sree Narayana College, Nattika. Today's session starts with an eminent personality, Dr. JINU MATHEW on crafting grant proposal. Is a topic. Then she's a grants manager in Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore. I feel honored that we have about more than 500 participants across the country and from various parts of the globe, making our FD a truly significant one. Participants using YouTube link can ask the queries in the comment box. After the session, it will be answered by the resource person. I'm sure that this 3-day FDP will surely create a change in participants' attitude towards research. I wish all the participants would actively participate in the discussions and wishing everyone a successful and fruitful future. Now I request Dr. M.A. Suraj sir, head of the Department of Botany, to give welcome address. Sir, please.
Thank you, Vinny Madam. Respected Principal Dr. Sree Narayana Madam, the resource person for the webinar, Dr. JINU MATHEW, Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore, teachers, research scholars, scientists, students, and my dear friends. Good afternoon and welcome to the webinar on the topic Crafting Grant Proposal. I am Dr. M.A. Suraj, Associate Professor and HOD, PG and Research Department of Botany, Sree Narayana College, Nattika. Today's webinar on the topic Crafting Grant Proposal is a part of 3 days faculty development program on best practices in research organized by the Research and Publication Committee and IQAC in collaboration with Kerala State Higher Education Council, Government of Kerala. Most academic researchers must find funding from outside sources for carrying out their project work. The funding organization have a definite purpose and are looking to fund projects that contribute to the achievement of that purpose. So, research grant proposal to be effective, the scientists must send their project proposal to appropriate funding agencies. Settlement of research fund is yet another problem. Fortunately, today we have a resource person who is an expert in this field. The resource person is none other than Dr. JINU MATHEW, young, dynamic, talented person with an excellent academic track record. Presently, she is functioning as Grants Manager, Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore. Dr. JINU completed her UG in Biotechnology and PG in Biotechnology with first rank from St. Berchmans College and Cochin University of Science and Technology, respectively. She acquired PhD in Biochemistry from Indian Institute of Science. She is a postdoctoral research scholar of Georgia Institute of Technology, Atlanta, USA. She was a faculty member of Indian Institute of Science for a short period. She also functioned as program manager of International Cooperative Biodiversity Group. Later on, she moved on to National Center for Biological Sciences, Bangalore. She functioned as program manager, STEM Cell Research Program. Right now, she is working as grants manager, Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore. In addition to this, she has participated and coordinated workshops and conferences related to neurobiology, genetics and disease biology, genome sequence analysis, stem cell research. She has also published more than 10 papers in national and international journals. On behalf of Postgraduate and Research Department of Botany and Sree Narayana College, I welcome you, Madam, for this session. Next, I would like to welcome Dr. Sree Narayana Madam, Principal, Research Supervisor in Chemistry, for the support, motivation, and inspiration for organizing the webinar. I also welcome Dr. Binamol, Coordinator of the webinar, Dr. P.S. Jaya, IQAC Coordinator, other organizing committee members, all participant teachers, and research scholars. Now, I request our respected Principal, Dr. Sree Narayana Madam, to deliver presidential address. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Ma'am, please. Reena, ma'am, please.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Dr. Suraj.
Thank you.
Welcome to the third session of the 3-day Faculty Development Program on Best Practices in Research. This program is organized by the Research and Publication Committee of IQAC of our college. The previous session was about scientific research, article writing and publication by Professor T. Velmurugan, head of the Department of Computer Science of DG Vaishnav College, Chennai. The session was very highly informative and we got a massive response from all participants and many were asking to hold more such sessions. Today we are having a session on crafting grant proposal by Dr. JINU Valayil, Grants Manager, Office of Research Grants, Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore. As teachers, we often have to write research proposals to get funding for our projects. All research proposals are designed to persuade someone, to tell someone that our project is worthwhile, we need funds. And a research proposal basically describes why it is important, what we will investigate, why it's important, and how we will do research. Today's session is going to throw light on how to prepare a worthwhile research proposal, and I'm extremely happy to have with us Dr. JINU Valayil, who is an expert in this field, and I'm sure after her session, many of us will be confident enough to prepare research proposals which will find grants. We have many funding agencies, as Suraj sir mentioned, and many of our teachers are really, we are actually not aware of the technicalities behind preparing an effective research proposal. So there are many teachers who are looking for grants, and in this aspect, I request Dr. JINU to help us so that many of our teachers will be able to pursue the research in their field by getting grants. I hope the session will be effective, and I thank the research committee of IQAC for finding such an expert resource person for this session. I welcome all once again, and I hope all will be benefited after the session. Thank you and welcome, Dr. JINU.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Now I request our respected and dignified resource person of today's session, Dr. JINU ma'am, for the keynote address. Ma'am, please.
Thank you, Vinu, and thank you, Suraj sir and Reena sir. It was such a warm welcome, and in the welcome note, you have nicely pointed out all the major challenges that you face, that one would face with writing grant proposals. So I hope, I should apologize for bugging you all on a Saturday evening, but unfortunately, neither of the other times we're working out. So I'll try my maximum to ensure that you make the best use of it. So I'll just quickly share my screen. I hope you are able to see my screen now.
Yeah, JINU. You can see it.
So before we move on to the core discussion, I'll give a brief introduction about myself. As Suraj sir has already given like a very detailed introduction, so I don't have to say anything more. But for the sake of saying, I'll say that I'm a biologist by training. And I have a bachelor's and master's in biotechnology, followed by a PhD from the biochemistry department at IISc. And I was a postdoctoral researcher at Georgia Tech for almost 2 years. And while I was at Georgia Tech, I was, along with my postdoctoral research project, I was also serving as program manager for a multi-institutional large grant. And that is where my research administration experience started. And once I came back to India, I decided to switch to full-time research administrator, and I joined the National Center for Biological Sciences as a program manager for one of their large grants. And beginning this year, January 2020, I moved back to Indian Institute of Science as a grants manager. And we are in the process of setting up an office of research grants at our institute. So as a research administrator, what I basically do is I don't do any experiments now, but I work closely with the researchers to help them, to inform them about the funding opportunities in their areas of research. And I also work with them to help them develop their proposal. It's sometimes even writing bits and parts of the proposal. And the most help is offered in terms of budgeting and the non-technical writer. And I also help the faculty to coordinate large team science grants, as in we have very large programs that involves more than 50 faculty within our institute, and of course, our stakeholders outside our institute, which includes industry collaborators as well as other academic institutions. So we sort of help them to coordinate and manage such large grants, and science outreach and communication is, of course, a part of our the whole work process. So that is briefly what I do. And I'll move to the core topic without wasting any time. So I have titled my today's session as Crafting Your Grant Proposal. But let me begin by saying that there is no such magic formula that you can apply to write a winning grant proposal. I would say that grant proposal is a skill that you slowly develop by practice. And it's like mastering any other art or sports. You practice and perfect it. And again, when it comes to grant writing, I usually take the analogy of, drawing diagrams, as in most of us have drawn diagrams at least during our school times, and not everybody are really great at drawing, but, still all of us have managed to do that. So how did we do that? We, of course, needs a template or a figure that we need to copy. So those who are not that great at drawing, we will slowly try to copy the figure, and maybe by tracing it, and then we will practice it over time to get or to replicate a diagram that almost looks at least 80% close to what the actual diagram is. And then we will neatly label all the sections. So our focus is to get the sections that needs to be labeled right. So same is the case with grant proposal writing, as in when you start practicing, you need to have a template that you can follow, and you also need to make sure that all the sections that a grant proposal should have are there in your proposal. So when you talk about template, where do you get that from? So the first and foremost thing is to get the gist of scientific writing. And, scientific writing is most often confused with complicated writing. So scientific writing is not presenting things very complicated, but you have to state it very simply. So you can use simple structures, but it has to be very factual. So scientific writing, that is my first point here. Scientific writing is not presenting things in a complicated manner. It is just that it has to be very simple and factual. Factual in the sense you have to support whatever, every sentence that you state in your proposal should be supported by citations of reports or recent publications. So that is how you should think of writing your grant proposal. So to develop this or to get a sense of how a scientific writing should be, there is no other shortcut than to read constantly. Read scientific journals, and also if you do a web search, you will find successful grant proposal templates. So I would recommend that you develop your writing style by reading these templates. So once you have developed your way of writing, the next part is to get all the components that your grant proposal should have ready. So I'll talk about the structure of a grant proposal in a bit. So this is an interesting cartoon that shows the outcome of a review committee meeting. So usually, during these review committee meetings, nowadays it's all online, but when it used to be offline, the review committee members will meet in a common room, and they'll be given a pile of proposals that we get. And they'll go through these piles, and at the end, they'll segregate it into three. So one will be a small pile of proposals that they recommend for funding. And then there will be another pile, which they think that, could be waitlisted, are good, but not competitive enough to be funded. And then, there are many proposals that go to the trash. So here, your challenge is to find your way to the fund pile. So how do you do that? So the two major aspects, I would say, when you before even you think of writing a proposal, are one is be smart enough to choose the right funding agency, And the second is carefully draft your proposal. So that is how I have divided my today's session. The first first part I'll be talking about how to identify the right funding agency, and the second part I'll be talking about how to properly draft your grant proposal. So moving on to the first part. So before thinking about where to look for funding, you should give a thought about what kind of research are you planning to do. Are you planning to do basic research, or are you planning to do some applied research? But applied research in the sense that will be application that will be built on some non-facts, but that's not going to end up in a product that can be commercialized. And then, there can also be research projects that end up in technological innovation, can be anywhere from early proof of concept stage to a product that can be commercialized. Or your research might be oriented towards addressing a societal problem. So you rightly have to think about which of these categories your research would fall into. And based on the nature of your research, the places that you should look for funding are going to be different. So when you talk about funding, when you search for funding, you have to keep your search open to all the levels. So when I say all the levels, for instance, we all know that government agencies are the prime location from where we get most of the research funds. But you can think of government agencies at international level, as in you can get funding from US Federal Institute, federal government, or you can get from UK government, in addition to the Indian government. And again, when you consider the government agencies at national level, you have the central government agencies that can fund your research. You also have options from the state government. And sometimes you might also get funding from local bodies, like maybe panchayats or something, to address a societal problem. And then there can be bilateral agencies. So bilateral agencies are formal bodies that are established based on the agreements between two countries to promote the collaboration between two countries. So there are several such bilateral agencies pertaining to India, like IGCST for Indo-German collaboration, CEFIPRA for Indo-France collaboration. So if you have a collaborator in other country, bilateral agencies are where you should be looking for. And if you are trying to address a societal problem, so if you're doing basic research or applied research, you're more likely to find funding opportunities from government agencies and bilateral agencies. And if you're looking for a technological innovation, then of course there are a few government agencies that are dedicated to fund technological innovations, like BIRAC or GITA. But mostly technological innovations are funded by companies, and there are rare cases where the companies put forth a call for application. So it's more or less like based on person-to-person connection. So don't shy away from reaching out to people if you think that you are going to address, or your research is going to result in a product. And if you're trying to address a societal problem, you're more likely to be funded by foundations. So keep such things in mind before you start hunting for your funding opportunities. So I thought I'll list a few government agencies. Of course, I'll not have time to go into detail about the schemes and programs of each funding agency, but I thought I'll just give some pointers so that you can go to each of their websites and do your research. So coming to the national agencies, of course, DST, DBT, SERB, UGC, AICTE, ICAR, ICMR, and strategic sectors like DAE, ISRO, and DRDO are some of the major funding agencies that have a much more broad research interest. And if you look at, if you go to these funding agency websites, you will find that these funding agencies will have basically two types of calls. One are calls that are open throughout the year, and the others are calls that are with much narrow objective and with a specific deadline. So if you go to the DST website, you will find something called maybe what is new or new calls. So there you will only see proposals that are invited for a narrow objective with a specific deadlines. And the other calls which are open throughout the year, you will not find information there. But if you search, if you look for the programs or schemes under DST, you will see that DST funds several other schemes like technology development or climate change, energy, and so on. There are many such schemes. So for these schemes that they don't have a specific deadline, and you can go to their online portal and you will find places where you can upload your proposals. So keep in mind these two things, because often people miss out on the around the year calls because they are not listed on the page where the call for proposals are invited. And again, since majority of the audience who have gathered here today are university teachers, I would recommend that you should be looking at UGC and AICTE very closely, because they have specific schemes for research at university. And even DBT has specific calls, but I'm not sure whether it is open throughout the year. There was a program called DBT Star program specifically to promote research at colleges, and DST has something called FIST program, which supports infrastructure development at colleges. So these are some of the things that you can explore. And in addition to these, the major funding agencies which I listed now, which has like the broad research goals, there are ministries of central government that have a very narrow focus, like the Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology. They will be funding research only in their areas of interest. So if you are a person who is working on information technology, you should be looking at the MATHEW site. And if you are a person doing something related to earth sciences, then you should probably visit the Ministry of Earth Sciences website. So, when you think about all these things, you need to be looking into the very specific agencies that fund your research, because say I'm doing something related to earth sciences, and I see that DBT has a program on environment. But I have greater chances of getting funded, or what I would say less competition, if I put in a proposal to Ministry of Earth Sciences rather than going for DBT. So, those are the smart decisions that you should make to ensure that you get funded. And as I already told, there are also international federal agencies like the National Institute of Health and National Science Foundation, both located in the US, and EPSRC, which is the Engineering Physical Science Research Council, and Wellcome Trust, both in UK, and French National Research Authority, which is the acronym for it is ANR, and there are several others. So all these most of the calls of these agencies are for their nationals of their country, but they often put out calls where foreign nationals are eligible to apply. So although they say that foreign national can be a PI on these grants, as grants managers, we strongly recommend our faculty to have a collaborator there, because that will increase your chances of getting funded. And here I'm just listing few bilateral agencies so that you're familiar with these names. You can maybe take a screenshot of this particular slide so that you can, later when you get time, you can go and visit their websites. I'm not going to read out in everything, but in short, all these bilateral agencies, they support research grants, as in they give out calls against, again, it will be like against a specific topic. It is based on the agreement between two countries. Recently, India and Italy had signed an MOU. So, soon there will be a call related to the areas of interest under their, the areas of interest that are of mutual benefit to both the countries. So there will be announcement for or invitation for grant proposals in narrow areas from each of these bilateral agencies. And in addition to that, they will have around the year programs for travel grants and meetings. So if you are, if you are looking for a scholarship or a funding support to visit a foreign collaborator that you have, or to attend international conferences, these are some of the places that you should be looking. And the third section is about foundations. As I told, foundations mostly fund things that address a cause. They do not generally fund basic research. There are, when you apply to foundations, again, make sure that you read thoroughly the mission of the foundation, because they will not generally fund anything outside their mission. For instance, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, if you go to their website, the mission is clearly stated. And if you look at the funding pattern, you will see that they have funded research that would solve diseases in low or middle income countries. Like they had programs that funded TB research, they had programs that funded malaria research and HIV vaccine development. So if you are looking for, if your project is something related to biodiversity, then it is not wise to apply to Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, because they're not going to look at it. And that is not their area of interest. Instead, you should be looking at foundations like the Conservation Leadership Program or OLAM International, which are dedicated to conservation and biodiversity. And there are other foundations like the Miralika Grants Foundation, Anandana, which is basically Coca-Cola India Foundation, Asim Premji Foundation, and Rockefeller Foundation, which are interested in funding research that would address a societal cause. It can be education of children in rural areas, or it might be something research related to supporting autistic children or something like that. And there is another interesting foundation, which is the Prince Cloud Foundation. They fund arts and culture. So when you talk about arts and culture, you might not find not many grants pertaining to it, but this is one excellent source where you can look for. And there are two other grant opportunities which are very unique to women. And it sounds funny. When I look at it, I feel that they make money from women, and this is a way for them to pay gratitude to women. So these are the L'Oreal Foundation and Fair and Lovely Foundation. They have specific program for women scientists. So all the ladies who are hearing out me today, please go and visit their websites so that you might find something that you can make use of. And as I told, the fourth possible sector that would fund you are companies. And again, companies, they'll fund only something that is related to their areas of interest. And mostly this applies to, people who are doing some kind of engineering stuff, because most calls are from Amazon, Facebook, or Microsoft that are related to artificial intelligence, virtual reality, or maybe system security, or so on. There are also other, the two companies or private sectors that fund life science researchers. One is Merck. They usually put out calls for drug discovery, machine learning, and so on. And National Geographic supports a lot of conservation programs. So these are some of the interesting companies where you can look for. And, as I told that you can look for funding from government agencies, bilateral agencies, foundations, and companies. But, I have listed very few here. But trust me, there are more than 100 funding agencies, and at any time you will find more than 400 active calls. So it's not very practical or feasible for one person to go to each of these 100 websites and look on a daily basis whether they have any new calls. So you need to find a smart way to keep track of new notifications and grant calls. So how do you do that? At our office, when we have built a funding database for our faculty at our institute, and our funding database has, as I told, more than 100, we cover more than 100 funding agencies, including government agencies, companies, everything. And we have more than 300 calls now. And we regularly update it based on some notifications. So we don't go to the funding agency website every day, but we have mechanisms to get notifications. So I'll give you some pointers that would help you to keep track of new grant calls. First, of course, on my list is a resource called NGO Box. So I have given, I would recommend that, all who are listening to me here today, please take a screenshot of this slide so that you have the links. So NGO Box is, they usually compile the grant calls for NGOs, but they also have grant calls for academic researchers, and they almost cover everything. So, I mean, this is the top on my list. The notice board is another resource that you can make use of to get notifications about the grant calls. So you just have to subscribe to their newsletter or their RSS feed, so you will get regular updates. And both these send updates on a daily basis. And as I already mentioned, we at IAC, the Office of Research Grants, we have compiled a funding database, but unfortunately we have restrictions on sharing it with external researchers at this point, but we maintain a page for upcoming deadlines. So now, today, if you go and see, you will find that you will see the grant calls till March. That has deadlines till March, and we have organized it month-wise. So you can have a look at our website. And if you are a life science researcher, two resources that will be very helpful to you. One is India Bioscience. So India Bioscience is an organization that basically helps life science researchers, and they give grant opportunities, they advertise jobs. They conduct webinars, a lot of grant writing workshops, and so on. So this is an excellent resource, not just for grant, getting notified about funding opportunity, but life science researchers can make a lot use from India Bioscience. They are also now tapping into international funding agencies. So please do subscribe to their newsletters to get notifications. And the Research Development Office at the National Center for Biological Sciences, that is where I worked before. So they also have compiled a funding database for life science researchers, which is available on their website. Let me quickly turn on my pointer so that I can use it. Okay, so the link is here. And so these are all about the national opportunities. Of course, NGO Box and Notice Board will give you some of the international fellowships and grant opportunities, but it will mostly cover national things. And if you are interested in finding something related to international funding opportunity, Johns Hopkins University has compiled a list of such opportunities, and they have made it free. I have given the link here, so please do go there and have a look. They have categorized it as early career fellowships, postdoctoral fellowships, and so on. And STEAM ID is a relatively recently launched resource that caught my attention. And it's the app is nicely developed, and it more than funding opportunity, it lists the internship opportunities for students. So if you are really looking for a short-term visit to a foreign country, please visit STEAM ID. So with that, I'm done with the list of funding agency. So when we try to identify the funding agency, the most important thing, as I already mentioned, I'm trying to reiterate the point here. It's very important to understand your funding agency in terms of what their mission and interests are. You shouldn't be sending a proposal to a funding agency which will not interest them, because that's just wasting your time and their time. So please don't do that. Go to the funding agency website, read their mission, and try to look at the previously funded grants to understand the pattern, as in what have they funded and what is their current area of interest in terms of funding. And also that will help you to get some idea about the scope of the funded projects, as in the amount that you should be asking for. Because most of the foundations or maybe some of even the government agency grant calls, they'll not have a budget cap. But, ideally for DST, there is a technology development program. They never specify a budget cap. And if you look at the previously awarded grants, you will see that it ranges from 20 to 1 crore, but you will not find a grant call which is more than 1 crore. So this gives you an idea that if you ask more than 1 crore, that is going to be, reviewed very stringently, and they'll award it only if your proposal is very convincing and compelling, and the money that you have asked for is strongly justified. So these are some of the decisions that you can make by looking at the pattern of funding and understanding what is the scope of funding. Also, some programs, although they don't specifically mention in their guidelines, you can see that they will promote, they mostly fund research that are multi-institutional or that involves collaboration between two countries rather than a single PI grant. So these are some of the decisions that you should make and the thorough research that you have to do before finalizing upon a funding agency. So with that, I'm ending my discussions pertaining to finding the funding agency, and I'll move to the actual part of writing the proposal. So now that you know that, you have an idea and you know that where you are applying to or which funding agency you're applying to. So, and now we get to the real business of writing the proposal. And the first thing where you should start is by getting your idea clear. And I would strongly recommend that you write it down on a paper, because often, when the ideas are floating in the air or when it sits in our head, it looks like it's all clear to us. But once you start writing, you'll realize that, okay, you're not able to, you're struggling to maintain the flow somewhere, or you're missing connections. So that is where you actually should work on. So I have just put down a few questions that will help you to write down your first thought or idea. So think about what your idea is, and what is the need that made you to propose this idea, and what is the intervention that you propose, and how innovative or unique your approach is. Because, take any research area, you're not the only person who have identified the problem or have decided to attempt something to resolve it. So do thorough research to see what other people are doing. And based on that, you should propose your solution as very unique and as standing out. You shouldn't be replicating or doing something close to what already exists. You should also think about what are the impact and outcomes. So when I say impact and outcome, you have to think about the short-term impact that your study would make, and also the long-term effects. And think about what your strengths are. As Reenu ma'am rightly pointed out in her welcome note, she said that it's all about convincing your reviewers that you are capable of doing this research. So you have to have it very clear in your mind what your strengths are, and think about what are the resources or expertise that you would require to complete this project. And think if you already have it, and if you don't have it, you will have to find collaborators or other universities which are willing to share their facilities. So here, let me emphasize a point that you really have to build your network. Usually, including me, many of us shy away from talking to people and building collaborations and sustaining it. But trust me, it's not going to work if you shy away from this, because as when you start your research career, you will find that it will be very hard for you to make success with the big funding agency. So there you have to be very smart enough to collaborate with a researcher who is well known in the field and write joint proposals with them. And you have to gradually build your portfolio and credibility so that you transition to that stage wherein you are strong enough to propose something else. So once you reach that stage, if you send the proposal with your name, then people will identify that, okay, yeah, this person is somebody who has contributed enough to this field, and he or she will be capable of doing this research. So you should get to that level slowly, but it might not happen in a year or two. It will happen in a span of maybe 5 to 6 years. So be patient enough to build your collaborations and writing joint proposals as you begin your research career. Of course, as I told, you can have independent projects, but there, what you have to do is to be smart enough to identify the funding agency that is very specific or closely aligns with your interest. I already talked about the women scientist programs. So, that for sure limits your competition. And if you're working in biodiversity or conservation, focus on agencies that are, explicitly devoted to that research area. And also, as you try to write down the first thought, make sure that you have a clear idea about the timeline. As in, you should be clear about what and all activities are you planning and what time it requires to finish each activity. So you should have clarity in that detail. And you should also have clarity on the total cost, and never ask for some cost that you will not use up or that is not justified. So as I told, once you're done with this exercise and you have this half-page write-up, you will be able to identify the gaps and you will have an idea of where you should work on. So you have this half-page write-up ready, and now we have to move on to developing that half-page write-up into a full proposal. So here, when you start with a proposal application, the first and foremost thing is when you are applying to any agency, look if they have given guidelines. And it is very, very critical to read the guidelines properly. It might sound very silly, but trust me, they will have, these guidelines on the, when you read it the first time, you might think that, yeah, this all seems very straightforward. But there is a lot of reading between the lines that you should do, because their guidelines, they might not clearly say something, but it means a lot. So do a thorough read, maybe 2 or 3 times of the guidelines to make sure that you understand the call properly and you draft your proposal accordingly. Because there might be some calls which say that in their call they might not say that they need to promote the actual outcome of the project should benefit other countries, but they might have a section on data sharing which says that the agency strongly encourages that the data is made available to all the researchers. So this indirectly points that data sharing is a mandate of the funding agency, and for sure proposals that have this component will be given a higher weightage. So that is what I meant to say by reading between the lines. And make sure that you have thoroughly read the eligibility criteria and that you fit in there. And understand the budget guidelines very properly, because they might have specific restrictions on what should be asked and what shouldn't be asked. Sometimes some calls clearly say that no equipment can be purchased using this money. So if you miss out that, you might end up asking for equipment, and that might not look good when a reviewer looks at your application. And so most of the funding agency, if they have a grant call, they'll be giving a proposal template. But if it is like a general call to a foundation, they might not provide a proposal template. So in that case, if a proposal template is not given, these are some of the essential sections that you should include in your proposal. You start with the title, and then you have an abstract or executive summary. You explain your goals and objectives, methods and strategy, budget with justification, and additional information if required, like your biodata or maybe your sustainability plan or publications that are relevant to this particular proposal. So the first part, which is the title, I think I'm going a bit fast, but unfortunately there is no way that I can get a feedback. But if at all you feel that I'm going too fast, Binu, please feel free to drop me a message.
Yeah, sure.
So the first part is the title, and here take it very seriously. You shouldn't be you shouldn't be taking it lightly, and you should spend enough time on framing your title, because if you don't frame your title properly, it might end up with a reviewer who is irrelevant to your area, and that might result in the rejection of your proposal. And when you draft your title, you should be very concise, specific, and informative, and try to keep your title within 15 words or less. And again, as I already told, scientific writing is not presenting things complicated. So here, if you take the first example, you see that the title is The Systematic Development of a Local Initiative to Create a Learning Center for Community Education. It took me at least two or three times of reading to understand what they are trying to do. And instead, if you frame the same title as a local learning center for community education in Nattika, it's very simple. I mean, after reading, you don't feel it very heavy, and in the first shot, you will be able to understand what they are trying to convey. And in the attempt to make your title too short, don't end up making something very generic. Take the second example, as in, the title here is very short, but it sounds very generic, like helping girls in rural areas. So this leaves the reviewer with a lot of questions, as in helping girls of what age, or what sort of help you're going to give, or in what rural area are you trying to, plan your activity. Instead, if you're going with the second title, advocating for an end of child marriage in Kagati Gao, Nepal, you clearly state what sort of help you're trying to, or what is the activity that you're trying to do, and where you're planning your activity, and who are your target population. So these are some of the pitfalls that you should avoid while framing your title. And also make sure that you avoid fancy words which are irrelevant to your proposal. For instance, I have seen a proposal which is actually on the development of a diagnostic device. So this diagnostic device, if used continuously, maybe over 5 or 10 years, that will result in a lot of data generation pertaining to that particular disease. And once we have such a large data, if you apply machine learning to analyze the data, that will end up in a lot of insights into the disease. But machine learning is a long-term application that might or might not happen. You are not going to do that. Your proposal is all about device development, diagnostic development. So if you end up framing your title as a machine learning based diagnostic device development, the proposal will, seeing the title, the funding agency will send your proposal to a machine learning expert. He might read it and say that, this has nothing to do with machine learning, and that will result in the rejection of your proposal. So don't add such fancy words just for the sake that, you might think that these are the hot terms in science now, but don't add it if it sounds irrelevant to your proposal. So here I'm trying to illustrate with an example of how to frame your title. So this is just an example, and this is just one strategy. If you have a smarter way of working out a title, please go ahead with it. So here I have taken the example of my own PhD work. I worked on characterization of novel compounds from endophytic fungi. So basically you start by asking a few questions. Like, what is your research about? My research was about identifying novel compounds. And what are the methods that you intend to use? I used NMR and anti-proliferative assays. And who or what is the subject? I used endophytic fungi from the plant Sree. And what was the result? My project resulted in identification and characterization of novel compounds with anti-proliferative activity that could be used as drug leads in future. So the next step is to identify the keywords in each of these sentences. So I have highlighted some of the key words that I think as the keywords that I should have to convey my, convey my work. So now get all these keywords that you have identified together, and now strike off all the keywords that are repeating. So that is what I have done here. Okay. And then, with what is remaining, you try to frame a sentence, a full sentence. So this is the sentence that I framed with whatever words were remaining. Isolation and characterization of novel compounds with anti-proliferative activity from endophytic fungi isolated from Sree that can serve as drug leads. So this essentially conveys what my whole work is about, but this sounds too long, and by the time the reader gets to the end, they'll be lost halfway. And it's 22 words. So I try to make it more succinct by eliminating some words or some words that are repetitive, or by combining the idea that are given in 2 words into one. So I've come up with something like isolation and characterization of novel anti-proliferative drug leads from endophytic fungi isolated from Sree. 14 words, good to go. So now we are done with the title, and we move on to the abstract or executive summary. So this is as critical as framing your title, because this is where you try to, in 200 or 300 words, you are trying to convey the essence of your proposal. And it's after reading your abstract or executive summary that the reviewer will decide whether to read the rest of your proposal or not. So, pay thorough attention to this part, and make sure that you cover in your abstract your purpose and motivation, problem statement, work plan. You need to highlight what is unique about your approach, and the expected outcome and impact. And throughout this abstract, there should be a connection. A proper connection between the problem statement and the solution that you propose and the outcome. So here is one interesting cartoon that I found wherein the researcher says that my team has created a very innovative solution, but we are still looking for a problem to go with it. So this shouldn't be the case. The solution that you propose should clearly address the problem that you have identified. And it's always better to write the abstract at the end. And never ever copy paste text from other parts of the proposal to frame your abstract. Write it very fresh. And also after writing abstract, give it a day, come back and revisit it a day later to see how you can make it very succinct. And it should, it should sound very exciting. Try reading it out to a friend to see whether he or she understands it properly and are they as excited as you are about your research. So we are done with title and abstract and we move on to the statement of need. So this is where you set the plot for telling your story. A good grand writing is all about a good storytelling, as in it's like watching a movie. You have to introduce your characters and then comes a problem. And then you see how the characters are trying to solve the problem. And then you set the climax stage. So here, you have to start by introducing your problem statement and then come up with a solution to that, your proposed solution, and then, give the climax by explaining the outcomes and the good world that you're imagining with your research. So while explaining the statement of need, you have to clearly mention the problem that you intend to solve. Remember that if you cannot convey it with clarity, the reader will not be able to get it. And always, when you frame your statement of needs, support it with recent, current, and relevant reports and statistics. As I told, that's all what a scientific writing is about. It should be very factual. There is no imagination or thoughts that are not supported by reports. And present the problem as urgent but solvable. In the urge of explaining your problem, never over-exaggerate the problem and make the reader think that, this problem is unsolvable. So you have to kind of strike the perfect balance. And you must convince your reviewer that your proposed program will solve the problem. And wherever it applies, if possible, provide quantifiable ways. As in, if you are developing a diagnostic device and if you are aiming at affordable healthcare, you might end up saying something like, you're aiming to increase healthcare affordability by 20%. So there you are giving a quantity. So, this doesn't apply everywhere. So wherever it applies, try to provide quantifiable measurements. So we are done with the statement of need. And now we move on to goals and objectives. So here, the first thing is, I've seen that many people confuse between the difference of goals and objectives. So goals are general aspiration that you want to achieve. They can be very broad and general. Whereas objectives are the specific steps that you take towards achieving a goal. And within a goal, you might have 3 to 4 specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time-bound objectives. So this specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time-bound is, kind of abbreviated as the SMART rule for framing your objectives. And while framing your goals, as I told, they are very broad. So you can use words such as decrease, deliver, develop, or something. So I'll illustrate with an example. The goal can be decrease the degree of malnutrition among young children in Northwest Louisiana. So this is like a very broad goal. But within this, you can have a specific objective that by the end of year 1, provide 125 mothers in Northwest Louisiana with a 2-hour training program that will provide health and nutrition information. So here, if you see, your goal doesn't give any numbers or a time, but in your objective, you see that, by the end of year 1, you're planning to give, provide 125 mothers. So there is a number there. And you're also specifying what you're trying to provide them. So it is very specific and measurable. So that is the difference between goal and objective. And after writing a goal and objectives under the goal, sort of trace back to your statement of need and see whether it aligns with your statement of need. Your goal shouldn't stand out comparing to your statement of need. It should gel well with the problem statement. And once you have written down your goals and objectives, the next major part is to describe your strategy or methods that you're going to use. So here you have to fully model the how of your proposal with proper explanations and visuals. So keep the reader on track with regular signposts. So if you see the second figure down here, you will see that the first direction map, it looks okay. As in, like, you just have to, if you're standing here, just go here, take the right, then go here, take the left. But, look at the second one. They have clear landmarks. So the problem with this route map is, it depends on from what direction I'm looking at it. Say, for instance, I'm looking from here. It's totally different, so I get lost. But if you take the second one, you see that, in whatever direction I'm looking, I have landmarks so that I can locate it. But here, with both these figures, I took it from the web, but after having a closer look, I felt that they should have given a north, south, east, west map also. So that is some fault that I figured maybe my eyes are too trained to pick the faults within everything. But, that on a lighter note. But, what I was trying to convey is your explanation about your methods and strategy should be in that detail. And you shouldn't give space for any confusion or question with the reviewer. And link each activity that you're explaining with your goals and objectives. So at each stage of your proposal, there is always this tracing back. You have to, if you're at your methods and strategy, see that the activity that you have written aligns with your objective, the objective aligns with the goal aligns with your problem statement. So you sort of have to do this tracing back at each stage of your proposal development. And make sure that under each activity that you're explaining, you give specific deliverables. Better if you can formulate it as bullet points with clear timelines and measures, that would be perfect. And also often it's advisable to give your deliverables in the form of a Gantt chart. So if you're not familiar with what a Gantt chart is, this is what it looks like. It gives the activity and your proposed timeline for finishing the activity. So this can be generated using Excel, or there are other softwares that give you much better Gantt charts. And while explaining your methods and strategy, if you are planning any collaboration as part of your research, make sure that you elaborate on that in this section. You should clearly tell what the responsibilities of each partner is and what is it that they are intending to finish in what time, and how the other partner will take from there and complete the task. And clearly articulate the outcome of your study. Now we move on to almost the last part, which is the budget. And with the budget, as I already told, it's all about reading the guidelines. Read the guidelines very thoroughly and understand what is allowable under this grant call. If they specifically say that something they don't fund something, then don't ask for it. And make sure that you give proper justification for every single penny that you're asking for. And it should closely align with an activity that you have proposed. And before, a lot of times I have seen that when people enter numbers, finally they don't check their math and the total amount doesn't tally with the others. So don't make that mistake, check your math. So these are all simple things, but you have to sort of make sure that you get it all right. So mostly same as the case of the proposal template, the funding agency will provide a budget template, but if they don't, this is a simple format that you can use. So the last part is any additional details. So this depends on whether the funding agency asks for it. And as I told, if there is no specific format for a proposal, then you can provide additional details only if you have some supporting documents that will support your or strengthen your research proposal. So don't include any irrelevant information. And if the funding agency asks for additional details like your biodata, make sure that you include or highlight the strengths or your experience, which are which will support your research proposal in your biodata. So don't send a blank biodata to that you use for a job application to the research proposal as well. You should be smart enough to highlight your strengths and expertise. And if possible, try to highlight the existing facilities again, if the funding agency asks for it. And if it is permitted, you can mention, say, if you are looking for something in nanoscience and you have a nice nanofabrication center at your institute, you will want to highlight that. And you also can provide a sustainability plan. So this, the whole process, this makes the reviewer think that you have thoroughly thought about the process and you have a clear plan in your mind, and that I can give fund to this person so that he'll do it. And always, after writing a proposal, read it and revise it from a reviewer's perspective. Because a reviewer, they will fund only what they understand. So your challenge there is to, give the proposal in a clearly understandable form, which the reviewer can finish in 10 to 15 minutes. Don't expect a reviewer to spend more than 10 or 15 minutes on your proposal. So make sure that you use very clear, simple, and explicit statements, and use active statements instead of passive ones, and use graphics and bullet points wherever applicable to sort of summarize the text that you are giving. And don't use too many flowery adjectives to show your enthusiasm, because that breaks the flow of reading. And after all, you have to sound very confident so that, as I told, the reviewer gets convinced that I can confidently give money to this person. So with that, I'm almost done, and I'm ending my conversation here. So the downside of webinars these days is it ends up being a monologue and you don't get feedback from your audience in a real time. But I hope the only concern that I have is maybe I would have gone a bit fast, because I see that I've exceeded the time. So after all, proposal writing is not rocket science, just that it requires a lot of patience and practice. So I hope you will all have at least you all have got at least a few takeaway points from my webinar today. But if you have more questions, please feel free to contact me. You will find my email ID on on our institute website. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, JINU. Thanks, JINU. Now it's open for discussion. Participants, if you have any queries, you can directly ask her. You can unmute your mic and ask her, please.
I see a lot of encouraging remarks. Thank you. Thank you all.
Yeah, there is one question from Chitra. Yeah. So please.
Okay, one sec. Yeah, I saw that. So what is the difference between transdisciplinary and multidisciplinary? There is no much difference. It basically means the same.
Ma'am, is there any funding agency for research in mycology?
Well, specific to mycology, specific to mycology, I'm not sure, but DBT has programs that fund. So again, mycology, this is one thing where you should think about the applications of your research. If you are thinking of looking at bioactive compounds from fungi, then DBT will have a program on pharmaceuticals. So that is where you should be looking for. So it depends on, what are the applications of your research rather than what your subject is.
So many positive kinds from so many positive remarks.
I see that. Thank you.
I have a doubt. So you mentioned about a funding agency, Women in Science.
Yeah.
Where is it actually based? Is it in UK?
So the one that I showed you, those were from L'Oreal Foundation and Fair and Lovely Foundation. So you can just do a Google search for L'Oreal Foundation or Fair and Lovely Foundation, and that will take you to their website. And that is open to people worldwide. Fair and Lovely Foundation, of course, that might have restrictions to India, but L'Oreal Foundation is open to all nationals. And in addition to that, if you are interested in more opportunities for women scientists, DBT has a women scientist program. So if you go to DBT website and look under their schemes, you will find that they have a women scientist program wherein they have, I forgot what the name is, women scientist A, B, and C, sorry. Yeah. So those are some additional programs that you can find.
Okay.
And as I told, yeah, our funding agency, our institute's upcoming deadlines web page is somewhere you can look, because that's updated almost on a daily basis with upcoming deadlines. So if there are any open grant calls, that will be there.
Okay. One of our students received a scholarship which was sponsored by Shah Rukh Khan.
And the Australia thing?
Yes, the Australia thing. She got around 95 lakhs or so.
Yeah, so those are like specific grant calls, and again, you might have to keep your eye open for that. So that is why I recommended all these resources like NGO Box and notice board and all, because most of the grant calls, as soon as it is announced, it comes up there. And mostly I find that faculty complain that by the time we see the grant call, it is too late to draft a proposal, and that is how an office like ours. I heard multiple people talking.
Yeah. JINU ma'am, can you hear me?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. One question from Anupama. Is there any funding agency available for college teachers to a postdoc abroad? She's asking.
Well, specifically, I haven't looked at it. One, because I haven't been catering to college teachers. But as I told, most of the bilateral agencies are where you can look for, this thing, the travel grants or short-term scholarships. I know that this Nehru Fulbright program also promotes, they have different categories of it. They have scholarships for administrators, teachers, and all those. And today I found something, it's a Forbes International Fund. So that was for teachers, basically. So that is something that you can look for. Forbes International, FORBES. And otherwise, look at the bilateral agencies.
Thanks, JINU. JINU, what? Okay. Thanks, JINU. One more question from Praveena Vijayan ma'am. She's asking how we are able to convince the funding agencies if we are going to do a project for the first time.
Yeah. Sure, Praveena. So here the thing is, there are early career grants that funding agencies provide to start your research. So again, you will have to, as I told, on our funding database, we have clearly categorized it as early career grants. But unfortunately, I'm not, I have restrictions on sharing more information on it. But there are early career grants by research funding agencies and foundations to support people who are starting their research or setting up their lab. And in addition, if you think that you're not able to make success with any of the early career research grants, or if they are too complicated, you might, as I told, you might want to collaborate with scientists who are well known in your area and start writing joint proposals. So that is how you slowly pick your momentum on this thing. And one clear agency that funds early career researchers is Wellcome Trust India Alliance. They have early career and mid-career research fellowships. And they are very open to, rather than looking at from which university you're applying, they are very inclusive and they are very supportive of funding research applications that come from even universities, as in like college teachers.
Okay, thanks, JINU. I think Suraj sir, he's trying to say something, it seems. Sir?
Teacher?
Yeah. If you want to ask any queries, please ask, sir.
No, please, teacher. Excellent presentation. Very nice. Well presented. Quite informative. Very nice presentation.
Thank you. I think I have tried to squeeze in a lot of information into the 45 minutes.
I think there will be no queries, it seems. Thanks, JINU ma'am. Thanks, JINU
Thanks
ma'am.
again.
There will be...
JINU ma'am.
Yeah,
JINU
yeah.
ma'am. Just one question. JINU ma'am, I carried out some projects funded by UGC. Then next,
Okay.
but while settling the accounts, usually the auditing and other thing will be done very later. By that time, we won't be there in that college. At the time of auditing, they will ask some fines. But the office people may not be knowing. Then we are in trouble. So liability falls on us. That's why we are very reluctant to take such projects.
Well, I mean, I cannot give much advice here because the problem with administrative offices is something that we even face at our institute and we are trying to iron it out. We basically have problem with our utilization certificate. I mean, it's not just with closeout. Even with utilization certificate, we are struggling a lot. So I am not able to give a better advice here, just that we have to face the real truth of it. I'm sorry that I cannot give you any pointers that would help you, but that is an issue that even we face.
Okay, why I am specifically saying this because I carried out some projects long back in 2010 or so. Here I am to retire. So I went for that certificates, the non-liability certificate. At that time, there was some query. So something, you have to settle something related to UGC project, which carried out 10 years back. But that's what that's why the teachers are very reluctant to take projects. Only the settling issue. Okay, that's right. Okay. Nice.
I understand. So exactly, I mean, it was because all of such problems piling up that our institute started thinking of an office like ours because we keep records of everything. And then throughout the grant life cycle, we maintain records of every communication that is going to the funding agency. So if you ask the administrative person to pull out something 10 years later, they might not spend time to do that. And that is where we step in and help.
Usually these UGC persons, they are not, they are satisfied with our utilization certificate. But here, local audit, Government of Kerala, these people, they are facing lot of problems. That's right. Okay, they are not facing any problem. Once you give this utilization certificate in their stipulated form, they are okay. Okay, but here they are.
Oh, I understand. I thought you had problems with the UGC. But here, I'll tell you, I mean, I shouldn't be stating it on a public platform, but at IIC, what we find is it's very difficult to get something done through our administration than with the funding agency, because the communication with the funding agency is something that you can manage by regular follow-up. But with our administrative institute, we are trying hard to move something. I think that problem persists everywhere.
Yes.
Thank you, sir. JINU ma'am, one more question from Chitra Prasad Balakrishnan. Ma'am, what about Erudit program?
Oh, I'm sorry, I haven't heard of it.
You haven't heard of it? Okay, ma'am. Okay, ma'am. I think no more queries, it seems. If you want to ask, please ask.
This is something new that I am also learning. Let me quickly search what it is.
Yeah, sure. Okay, I think it's time for wind up with the program. So it was the topic you started with, no shortcuts for a grant proposal, and you show the list of agencies, bilateral agencies, what is the right agency, which is the right agency to apply for special grants, especially for the ladies. That was very interesting for us, especially because we are all ladies, no? Then NGO works for academicians, how the title should be, abstract objectives, how to develop a project plan and a proposal as well as plan and all. It's very interesting and informative, JINU ma'am. And thanks a lot for your you spending your valuable time with us. Now I request Dr. Anita ma'am, Assistant Professor, Department of Botany, to give her word of thanks. Anita ma'am, please.
Okay. Binu, hello. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Hello.
Yes, sure. Sure. Audible only.
Okay. So thank you, Binu. Respected Principal, Dr. Sree Narayana, coordinator, teacher, head of the Department of Botany, Dr. Suraj MA, and our coordinator, Dr. Binumol, and dear participants in the FDP program. Okay, so good evening all. I straight away enter to my assigned duty. Okay, then dear friends, so we really made use this evening with Dr. JINU ma'am. Thank you ma'am for sharing thoughts, ideas, real facts about various agencies, foundations, which is related to this grant proposals and funding. And madam, you really explained us the pros and cons of this scientific writing of this research proposal. Thank you ma'am for boosting us and enlightening us. Thank you ma'am once again. So we really thankful to our beloved principal and Rin teacher for all her support and motivation. We are thankful to our PTA, which is our backbone of our college. We are also thankful to all the participants for the successful participation and cooperation in this FDP. And to coordinate a program, too many hands are working behind it. So I take this opportunity to thank all the committee members, especially IJ teacher, Anaba teacher, then the Babida teacher, Srila teacher, Arun sir, Praveen sir, and the list goes on. So I thank all in the name of Sree Narayana College, Nattika, and this research committee. So last but not the least, our coordinator, Dr. Binumol, who arranged this all the sections very nicely and coordinated the function, this FDP. Thank you, Binu. Thank you all.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you once again. Thank you, JINU ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
JINU ma'am, thank you. Thanks a lot, ma'am. JINU?
No problem. Thank you for having me here. It was wonderful.
Yeah.
Okay, JINU madam. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Bye.
Bye.
JINU recording off ആണ് കേട്ടോ. ഇനി സംസാരിക്കാം.
Okay. കുഴപ്പമില്ലാന്ന് വിചാരിക്കുന്നു.
കുഴപ്പമില്ല. വളരെ
പറഞ്ഞോളൂ സർ.
വളരെ നല്ല ഫ്ലോ, നല്ല പ്രസന്റേഷൻ ആയിരുന്നു കേട്ടോ. നല്ല സ്മൂത്ത് ആയിട്ട് വളരെ ഭംഗിയായി. ഓക്കെ,
താങ്ക് യു